Alabama police, well, they decided to kill a 16-year-old during a no-knock raid over marijuana. Put it up for a man. This is your war on drugs policy here. Alabama police conducted a no-knock pre-dawn raid on a Black family, shooting a 16-year-old named Randall Adjessom before stepping over his body as he lay withering in pain from his injuries to terrorize the other family members in the household over 8 grams of marijuana. This happened last year. Mobile police were actually looking for Randall's brother, who's a teenager too, 18 years of age, Randall Adjessom, who did not even live at the house they raided, where they ended up finding 8 grams of marijuana after killing Randall, which is just slightly over a quarter ounce. While medical marijuana became legal in Alabama in 2021, a law that is still being disputed in courts, state law still makes it a misdemeanor to possess less than 2 pounds of marijuana for personal recreational use, punishable by up to a year in jail. Alabama law, makes it a felony to sell any amount of marijuana, according to the Marijuana Policy Project. You have a governor who's adverse to the progression as it relates to the war on drugs, which is not a policy at all. It's not a war. You then have city mayors in Alabama who decided in their good judgment to start issuing pardons for misdemeanor marijuana. Why? Because that's city jurisdiction. As a matter of fact, there's one city in Alabama you can go, you get a marijuana charge, you go get a pardon immediately, and that's it. It's pretty automatic. So what did that do? Well, that stopped cops from arresting you for marijuana because they know the mayor has a default system where you're going to get an automatic pardon. See how the policy changed when one person figured out how they can utilize their position of authority to actually affect change? All right. Let me give you the background to this. In October, a grand jury indicted Randall Adjessom over 8 grams of marijuana. That's a misdemeanor charge of marijuana possession, as well as possession of drug paraphernalia and possession of a gun. Both of those also are in fact misdemeanors. But he was also charged with felony first-degree assault over a separate incident where he was accused of participating in a drive-by shooting that left the person with non-life-threatening injuries. Mobile police said they had been investigating the home for, quote, several weeks after receiving a tip from a neighbor about suspected drug activity in the house, the lawsuit states. On November 9th, 2023, just 4 days before the raid, Mobile police pulled over Randall Adjessom and, quote, discovered a small amount of marijuana, firearm, and what it considered to be evidence of intent to distribute marijuana, end quote. The lawsuit also states that Randall cooperated with the police by waiving his Miranda rights and agreeing to be interviewed, but they ended up releasing him despite of having enough evidence to charge him then and there. Perhaps they were looking for a much larger amount of marijuana, which is why they asked the judge to sign off on a warrant to raid the home, even though Randall did not even live at the home. However, the warrant signed by the judge did not allow for a no-knock pre-dawn raid, which is exactly what took place during the early hours of November 13, 2023. Now, remember, a magistrate judge or a superior court judge, they're not just signing off on a probable cause warrant. They're signing off on the how. They sign off on the methodology of serving the warrant as well. So when there are extenuating circumstances, a judge may say, okay, I'm going to agree that you have the authority, the judicial authority to raid in this particular way due to these other circumstances you have presented in good faith to the court. When that doesn't happen, the judge has no reason to believe you need a no-knock pre-dawn warrant. It's a warrant. It's just a warrant. You can knock on the door at 5 p.m. I have a warrant. Search the house. You know, we got a bunch of cops here. It's going to happen. But they serve the warrant as if it's high risk. That's the point. And there was nothing high risk about this entire ordeal. It was so non-high risk that they never told the judge it was a high risk warrant. They simply served it as a high risk warrant. And why is that part important? Because there's a dead teenager. That's why that part is important. There's a dead child who had nothing to do with any of this. Mobile police broke into the home, 5:37 a.m. About 40 minutes before the sun rose at 6:16 a.m. that day. The lawsuit states that Randall woke up thinking the house was being robbed. So he grabbed a gun to defend his grandmother, his mother, his aunt, and his sisters from unknown intruders breaching his childhood home, which is legal under Alabama's castle doctrine. It's legal for that 16-year-old to grab whatever he needs to grab to protect that home. Put him up again. Your policy in Mobile killed a 16-year-old baby. But he tried to surrender as soon as he saw they were cops. That's according to the complaint. As Randall rounded the corner, this brave young man, I mean, he's brave. He didn't give it a second thought. As Randall rounded the corner to the hallway, he saw that the intruders were police and immediately put his hands in the air and took a step backwards toward his bedroom. While Randall was in the process of retreating, and despite the fact he had not made any verbal threats or attempted to fire the weapon, John Doe Mobile Officer 1 shot Randall 4 times through the abdomen and torso. Randall immediately fell to the ground, writhing from the pain and shock of being shot multiple times. At the time, that police officer defendants gunned Randall down. He had not committed any crime, made any verbal threats, or resisted or evaded arrest. He was retreating from their intrusion. Quote, "What are we going to do with this?" A Mobile police officer posed the question of the cops in an apparent reference to the dying teenager on the floor. What they did not do was allow paramedics to transport the child to the local hospital, which was 8 minutes away. They didn't allow that to almost an hour later when he was pronounced dead. The lawsuit states the indifference to human life demonstrated by Mobile police officers during the raid stems from former Mobile Police Chief Paul Prine, who was quoted by fellow officers as saying, quote, "I'm not concerned with what the media and public thinks about the police, F the public," end quote. Chief Prine's comments, which are apparently echoed for months by other MPD officers, evidence the department's long-standing disdain for Mobile's residents. Like Randall and his family, the complaint states, Chief Prine, was fired earlier this year by the council for creating, quote, "strife and division within the city." The shooting death of Randall Adjessom was one of 6 incidents against Black people, including 4 who died, that were highlighted in a 100-page report prepared by Kenyon Brown, a former U.S. attorney for the Southern District of Alabama. The heavily redacted Brown report includes interview statements from multiple Mobile police officers, including 3 who confirmed that Chief Prine told officers to, quote, F the public during a meeting with about 20 officers. Now, what's the irony in that? Other than the obvious. The irony is that's the only job you have, is to protect them, is to serve them, is to be their advocates. You don't get certified as a police officer. Your certification says peace officer. You're there to keep the peace, not create the chaos. F the community, F the public, and the public says F the police. The cause and effect. They want to complain about the F the police crowd, but the F the police crowd came from the F the public crowd, cause and effect. You want to treat effect without treating the cause. You want the community to love the police, but you don't want the police to love the community. It doesn't work that way. This chief simply said something that all of them agreed with. The culture was already there. So the reason why you know that the chief simply said something that the culture agrees with is because nobody reported the chief. They echoed what the chief said as a compliment to the chief because he only was given life in words to the policy of action. One of the officers told Brown that the chief's words became a running joke among officers for the next 2 months, and they would repeat his words to show they were under no expectation to respect the public. They are supposedly sworn to protect and serve. One of those cops told Brown that Prine bragged about being able to look someone in the face and make them believe they were a friend when he actually didn't care anything about them. Put him up again. Now, who is he talking about? I don't know, maybe some politicians, maybe the head of the NAACP, maybe some attorneys for civil rights victims. He can look them in the face, act like a friend. You a snake in addition to being a bad cop. So, Prine's disdain for the public was evident when he blamed the media and the public for questioning the police tactics that led to the 16-year-old child's death. Quote, he said that the reason to conduct the pre-dawn warrant is to have an element of surprise, according to the report. Quote, despite knowing the danger posed by pre-dawn raids, which include the increased risk of excessive or otherwise unnecessary force, as well as the risk of avoidable injury and death to uninvolved persons, MPD took no action to restrict the use of such raids or lessen the danger these raids pose to members of the public, the claim states. Now let's back up just a moment. They said in the official report after this happened, they were monitoring. They had that house under investigation, under surveillance for weeks, according to the department. At no time did anyone care that a minor was living in the home? Was that part of the strategy? Did that make it to the notes section of the warrant? Did the judge know that there was a minor inside of the household and you were planning to engage in a pre-dawn, no knock warrant? The deadly raid that killed the 16-year-old Randall was captured on police body cam, and the footage has been viewed by attorneys and members of the family, but has not been made public. We will bring it to you when it is. The names of the officers involved in the raid have also not been made public. I can guarantee you we will bring you that as well, which is why they are listed as John Does in the lawsuit. I'll put up the current chief. So Chief William R. Jackson currently oversees the Mobile Police Department. Jackson has been leading the department as the interim chief since the city fired the chief that said F the public. This was in April. He was given the position permanently back in September. Sir, I don't know you. This is my first time hearing of you. I do hope that you are an actual leader, an advocate for this community, because the reason why they fired the last guy is because he was adverse to the community. I always choose to engage first contact with hope. So I hope the next time I'm reporting about a story related to the city that you govern as chief of police, it is because your leadership has been proper, righteous, and exacting. That is my hope. This is our first encounter.